How y'all doing? For this review, I'm going to review Mark Twain's classic A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. I'll explain why later in the video, why I'm reading this instead of the usual stuff you've seen me review on this channel. Okay, so this is a very common, this is a story we've probably heard about, but not necessarily know the details of. I'm trying not to give too many details, tell you the basis of the story here. The story is about Henry Morgan. He's a machinist from the 19th century, the 1800s. And through a head injury, he wakes up somewhere else and later finds out he's in the world of King Arthur. First he thinks it's all, everyone's just kind of insane and everything, but, he starts off when a knight chases him up a tree and later captures him and takes him to King Arthur himself, and takes him a while to realize, okay, this is real here, these are not crazy people and all that. So, and he gets burned at the stake. If it wasn't the fact that right at this point there was an eclipse above him, and he convinces King Arthur and his court that he's the cause of this. If you don't let him go, he's going to keep it like this forever, so they let him go. And during this process, Hank Morgan notices how the knights are. When the knight who captured him takes him to the court, and Sir Kay is his name, and he tells the court, hey, let me tell you how I captured this guy, and he embellishes everything. He claims that his unusual clothing is a magical suit that wasn't for it was only for a prayer of God that took away his magical ability, so he could be physically harmed and all this stuff. And he finds out that's how these people are. They go about the knights go about adventures. They come back and they give us all these extravagant stories when it's just where it wasn't even anywhere near like this. It's kind of mundane things, or things are not as bad as what they were. A simple fight could be a grand duel and battles and what have you. And these people believe it. They believe hook, line, and sinker. Even just people who tell the story. So Hank Morgan, after being released, and long story short, he actually becomes the second, his right hand man to King Arthur himself. He pushes Merlin out of the way. Merlin ends up being his rival here throughout this story here in parts. So, what's Hank Morgan going to do? Well, since he knows a lot about his time's machines and all that, and modern economy, he views the people here and he realizes he's the smartest person in this land here. So he's going to modernize it. He's going to change this King Arthur's England into a modern one, that he's familiar with. And he nearly succeeds. Behind Arthur and the court's back, he starts educating and training people to not only modern trade, communications, machines, making guns, dynamite, what have you. All this is done behind the scenes. Well, King Arthur goes about the rest of his business. But while he's doing that, Morgan has a few adventures of his own. For instance, a lady comes by to the court, Demoiselle Alessandre, who Hank calls Sandy, and she convinces the court that her lady and ladies in waiting there are trapped in this castle where this ogre has captured everyone. They need some brave knight to save them. So Hank Morgan is sent out in knight's armor to go about and try to rescue them. And at a series of adventures of meeting Morgana Le Fay, a few knights who were going to attack him, but he stops them because of the pipe going out of his mouth, thought it was some magical ability. Take advantage of a lot of people's ignorance. He gets out of it. He eventually arrives at the supposed castle, and ends up just being a pig farmer, and all the pigs Sandy is convinced we're just a magic tournament to pigs there, and the farmer is just an ogre in disguise or what have you. Again, just like Sir Kay, who captured Hank, she kind of believes in all this stuff. So it's one of the things that Hank is trying to fix. And of course, this book is a famous satire about King Arthur and the romanticization of such things of the time period. And it's taken to humorous effect, as I explained earlier through a couple examples. It's not always humorous. Later, King Arthur and Hank go out and have some adventures dressed as peasants. And one of the saddest things I've read in this book was the fact that they came across this old hut where an old woman who contracted smallpox, and they hear her story about how her family has died and what they have to do. and sort of misadventures. And after that, there's some misadventures there to where Hank and King Arthur are eventually captured and have been made slaves. Of course, and again, long story short, they were rescued by other knights, and going back to the comical fashion, they were rescued by knights, Sir Lancelot in particular, leading the way on bicycles. And yeah, the whole bicycle thing is one of the one of the things that are slowly developing by Hank as in his transformation of King Arthur's England into his modern one. And there was another scene where there are knights running around with on their shields is advertising for toothbrushes and stuff like that. But silly as it is, he does invent long distance modern long distance communications. Again, he developed behind the scenes guns, electric fences, dynamite. He still, but before the climax here, he still goes on these adventures. And one of the things he did earlier in the book is that he fixes a well. When he comes there, this is a famous well in a monastery that has special healing powers, but it's dried up. When he's there, Merlin is trying to fix it up through his magic, which isn't working. And Hank, he looks into it. It's a simple well, and it just needs to be fixed up the right way. But he has to convince these people through magic. Again, he's using their ignorance to his advantage. So as we approach the climax of the story, Hank, on hearing of Arthur's death, figures, okay, this is his time to really present himself in the new modern age. But things don't happen as he planned because after Arthur dies, and the church sort of interferes with him and his work, and most of the people who he's educated on the side runs away, and now he's in a climactic battle against 30,000 knights, and him and only about 52 cadets to fight off. And the thing is, he nearly wins, and I don't mean to give too much at the end about this, but you kind of know he does succeed from the beginning of the book, where Mark Twain meets Hank Morgan in Warwick Castle, and he's telling him the story after the fact. So again, this is a story that we've heard the title, we heard of Mark Twain, we heard his, we always know Huckleberry Finn, and of course the Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court is also one of his famous works. And the thing is, probably many of us have heard variations of this type of story through other things. Black Knight with Martin Lawrence. I think a cartoon of DuckTales did a similar episode where Gadget, again, the character who deals with gadgets and machines, goes to medieval times and all that. So, we hear variations of this story before. And, if this is not the first one, it's probably the most famous one we all derive from that. So why am I talking about this one? Well, this is a case of tangential learning. Earlier, I did a review of a book of Jack McDevitt's Eternity Road. This is a science fiction story where the events that happen here takes place in the future after the Earth and higher state civilization is crashed down, and some distant time later, the people living there trying to live their lives, and the events that, one of the things that pushes the events of this book is a woman inheriting a pristine copy of a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court from a guy who went on a journey to find this and other things. And hopefully they will, replenish what was lost in the past. And again, this, this, and in the course of the Jack McDevitt's book, he kept a secret what it would have made his career. And again, because they asked, why is it that he kept it secret and passed it on to her upon his death? It is one of those unanswered questions that leads her to go, okay, what's really going on? And the events follow. And because I never read the book, I only know about it, I decided to go to a used bookstore and pick me up a used copy and enrich myself through that. And I'm glad I did. I don't know about their favorites, but it's just one of the things I'm glad I did. And I did this before years ago with a Harlan Ellison story. I think you can still find it on YouTube. Of Harlan Ellison reading his short story, Prince, Michigan, and Hold to Relish. It's about a guy who wakes up in the middle of the night craving hot dogs from Pink's Hot Dog Stands, which is a real hot dog stand in California. And as he goes there, while he's eating his hot dogs, he has a conversation with the guy behind the counter when he can about Fyodor Dostoevsky. And they talked about, despite how good his works are, he's a terrible person and he treats women badly. And you can see that in his novels. And And the main character who's talking to the guy behind the counter is the guy behind the counter asks him, name me one female character that is, that he that treats, no, not one female character, one male character that treats women well compared to other characters in the books, not a minor one, a major one. And the protagonist of the story says Prince Michigan, who's the main character from The Idiot by Dostoevsky. So you can find a short story there relatively quickly online. Prince Michigan, Hold the Relish by Harlan Ellison. But because of that short story, mentioning that, I went ahead and grabbed a book and read that years ago, and I enjoyed it. And that's a good thing where don't just rely on sticking to the things you like. When these other works mention great works like that, I mean, if it sparks your interest, go ahead and grab yourself a copy and read it, so you can be on the same page. Now, it's not necessary to read King Arthur's, Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court to enjoy this. Far from it. It's just a way to expand, to grow as a bit, not so you don't stay stagnant. You can like it or hate it, but at least you experience it. So, there it is. Mark Twain's A Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court. That's the reason I did this review as a response to reading Jack McDevitt's Eternity Road, which you should also read when you have a chance. Thank you all for watching. Have a nice day.